Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by Tucker Hazel, and we are here today to do our first post E3 reveal announcement discussion. I think.
Post E3, during E3.
The fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, we're here to talk about Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. But if you want to talk to us about that game, anything else, well, Ubisoft didn't show anything else. You want to just talk about anything with us, Discord down there. Like, subscribe, you know what to do. I was gonna make a joke about like this game being leaked. I was gonna make like a segue, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah,
Fuck
no,
it.
you don't.
Tucker, what do you think about Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle?
I played about 75% of the game, I think, when it
Yeah,
came out. It was my first game in that style, so I
sure.
had no clue what I was doing. It didn't make any sense to me. But I think as an introduction to the genre, it worked very well. And
Yeah,
from what I played, had a good time with it. I think the control is very smooth. I love the animation. I'm not huge on the rabbits. They don't bother me too much. I know
yeah.
people absolutely despise them, but I thought it was fun. It was a cute, cool idea to have them combined with Mario and see the environments combined with Mario enemies and stuff. But at the end of the day, it wasn't really for me. And I don't think that this new one does anything more from what we've seen to really grab me and want to make me buy it. I bought the first one because it was a 2017 Switch game and I was buying
Yeah.
everything that year. But I'm not sure if, especially in a year like 2022, which has a ton of games already coming out that are huge, I don't know if this one really grabs my interest too much.
So I'm actually I'm fairly optimistic about this game because I'm indifferent trending on negative towards Kingdom Battle. I think that game is really not great. The level design, I think, really falls apart in the back half. I think that
Sure.
those overworld exploration segments are just unnecessary.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the narrative and aesthetic charm of that game comes from, wow, wacky, it's Mario and the Rabbids, they're here together. It really, it felt like a concept. It felt
Hmm.
like we took a concept and we stretched it out probably further than it should have gone.
Yeah, sure.
So when the game leaked because some Nintendo intern pushed the site live like 5 hours early, which I
I don't
would
even know how that happens.
I would imagine that if that hadn't been a pre-recorded live stream that Ubisoft Forward, there would have been less people because someone must have killed themselves after that. Because the first game leaks, the second game you're hours away.
The
You're
first
hours
game
away.
leaks like a year in advance, if I'm remembering correctly, or
It
at
was
least multiple months.
Yeah, it was a while ahead of time. I don't remember exactly when it leaked, but no. So leak aside, basically the premise of a sequel alone didn't excite me. I was pretty cold on the leak. It looked like we're doing it again, right?
Hmm.
But seeing the cinematic, listening to the devs talk a little bit, and seeing the gameplay, in my opinion, this really does look like a pretty promising sequel.
Okay.
I think that it seems larger in ambition in a lot of different respects. I think that it clearly has a stronger narrative focus that is telling its own story and isn't just about, wow, look, there's rabbits and they're in the Mushroom Kingdom.
Yeah.
This feels like a more confident game. I think that the changes in gameplay to be more action oriented are really promising. I think that's going to give the combat a more unique flavor when the first game was pretty standard and pretty simple, tactical combat. My big concern still is that I don't know if they did anything to the overworlds. You still have to follow the fucking
Mm.
little rabbit Roomba
Yeah.
around.
Hmm.
I wrote about this for CBR. I hope they almost add like Mario and Luigi or Paper Mario-esque overworld exploration elements that give that a little bit more weight. But from what I'm seeing so far, it looks like they're really taking a pretty bare bones and conceptual title and making it into a sequel that I think has more of its own merit.
So I can't tell any of that from the
Okay,
cinematic. I can't tell any from the gameplay. I didn't listen to the devs talk, to be fair.
sure.
I skipped to the gameplay because I was in a car yesterday for 13 hours, believe it or not.
Just
So
awful.
it was hard for me to watch the Ubisoft Forward. So I actually just watched the gameplay. But from what I can tell, the animation is fluid as all hell. And it
Yeah.
wasn't the first one. The animation quality is off the chain for these games. That was the first thing and kind of only thing I noticed in terms of changes. I couldn't tell any differences in the core gameplay. The overworlds do look more varied; they look more
That's true. Yeah.
unique. But I don't think we've seen enough for me to be able to tell if they're actually going to be more substantial. But at the end of the day, I think that from what I can tell, it seems like more of the same. And I think that depends on how you enjoyed that first game or not. I mean, clearly you're seeing something I'm not, but I mean, I really can't tell. I did not think that cinematic was anything special. It was just kind of, yup, space thing, and something's going wrong. Characters are, oh no, something's going wrong, and bad guys are there. And I was like, well, yep, that's a way to open a game that any could apply to any game. So I don't really know what you're seeing in terms of more involved story or anything like that.
Well, so this kind of two things. I think to speak to the story point first, I think that the fact that they're integrating more of the cast, bringing it to a larger scale, taking influence from something like a Mario Galaxy and the core Mario aesthetics, but putting it in the context of a world that feels more its own, with
Mhm.
its own villains and enemies and environments that don't look like here's the direct Mario analog. You get a little bit of
Sure.
that, like the sort of like Luigi's Mansion-esque aesthetic or whatever, but it seems like it has its own identity, which I think is important,
Okay.
and
Sure.
and communicates to me that they have their own story to tell, opposed to, again, riding on the sort of meme factor novelty of pushing these two worlds together.
Mhm.
I think that is interesting, and I think maybe the thing you're missing from the gameplay is that it's no longer grid based. um
Oh, okay. Sure.
you still have like a amount of
A
space you can
range.
you can
Yeah.
traverse per turn, but we see, I think it was Rabbid Peach, like pick up a bob bomb and kick it out of frame and move around more. I think that, and what the developers did hammer home was the idea of making this more action oriented, and to me that seems like it's bringing more of Mario's lineage into the experience, and
Sure.
making the combat, again, like the narrative, less of an archetype and more of its own idea. And of course
Sure.
there are other strategy RPGs, as I learned, as I was told on Twitter, that are also a little bit more free movement.
Mhm.
But I just think that for me, a lot of the things communicated both explicitly through the trailer and the developer talk, and kind of implicitly through the gameplay, suggests that this is no longer just an archetypical game with an atypical
Concept.
narrative conceit. So
Sure.
for me, that does excite me, because I like seeing Mario do these weird things, and I like seeing a passionate developer take on a project they care about. And this just seems bigger, but not just bigger in terms of let's do more, but let's do it thoughtfully. Let's actually innovate and iterate on our foundation, and not just give us Kingdom Battle 2, which I think is
Sure.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I do like that it's Mario plus Rabbids something else. It's not Kingdom Battle 2. They're
Yeah.
going somewhere else with this literally. It's not just a continuation of the world that we saw before, but I
Yeah.
presumably they're visiting other planets. They've got a weird rabbit spaceship and stuff. So I think that's pretty interesting. I'm interested to see what the game is in terms of its unique villains, in terms of its
Sure.
concepts, because what we have seen, there's this edgy rabbit, there's a sort of villain squiddy looking guy with big
Really Sonic the
hat.
Hedgehog
Yeah,
type of design
hard
there.
to tell, but none of those look particularly like iconic or
Sure.
engaging or super well designed. I think that the fun potential of the combination of seeing Mario characters screwed up with Rabbids stuff is interesting. But I don't know if their entirely unique elements will be able to
Yeah.
stand on their own. I had this issue with any of number of the things in the original game that weren't clearly based on Mario stuff. I'm like, okay, well, this kind of feels generic. And the
Yeah.
Mario stuff ended up feeling like there was more thought put into it, because I think they were trying to respect the Mario lineage and not piss off Nintendo in the process. But I don't know. I'm not sure if leaving behind solely Mario elements to create a more generic world that doesn't have that own sense of charm to it is going to be something that grabs me. I think there's so much more in the Mario universe they could have pulled from for design and inspirations, and we'll see, and it's
Yeah.
likely that there will be plenty of rabid Mario characters and locations that we're familiar with. But I do think that the conceit of it being left behind is a little bit disappointing in terms of continuity, in terms of the potential of this kind of being one of the only times the Mario universe has been messed around like this. Of course, Nintendo's done Paper Mario, but I don't know. I just don't get anything from those original things, so I can't really see that being a huge draw.
Well, I think what I would push back on is the idea that anything's being left behind. I think what's more interesting for me is the fact that the Mario stuff is being met by more than just the gimmick of, hey, here
Sure.
is
Yeah.
Rabid Luma or whatever, right?
Hmm.
We're getting that stuff, and we see like sort of riffs on Bob-ombs and Shy Guys. Like there's and we see Bowser on the box and stuff. There's clearly a lot of Mario here. What I was kind of latching onto is the fact that I think that for the game to really have teeth, it needs to be more than just, hey, here is the novelty of seeing these things. And
Hmm.
so I don't think that we're pushing towards a generic world. I think we're pushing towards a world that doesn't rely so heavily on, hey, here's Donkey Kong, but he's also a rabbit or whatever,
Hmm.
And I think, again, I'm only cautiously optimistic. I think you're right. I
Sure.
think that the big purple wisp on looking fucking mid 2000 Sonic design is
Yeah.
not great. We need to
Yeah.
see that the original stuff meets and balances the Mario stuff to create a bigger world opposed to just a
Yeah.
gimmick.
Hmm.
But I think the fact that that is what they showcased first kind of communicates to me that we're gonna get that.
Sure.
I don't think we're gonna get, hey, here's like 4 rabid Mario characters and just a bunch of other random shit that Ubisoft Milan came up with, right? So, but at the same time, again, I didn't like the first game very much.
Yeah.
So I was looking at that trailer for how does this address the issues I had? How can I, find little elements that are suggesting that this game is going to be bigger and have more of its own merit opposed to
Sure.
just being a crossover. And I think we see that. But again, I need those overworlds to be actually engaging to explore. I need
Yeah.
the level design to hold up. I
Hmm.
need those characters to actually have merit, right? So there's still a lot of unknowns, but I'm cautiously optimistic instead of entirely indifferent, which I think is a good place to start from.
No, I agree, and I'd say I'm not negative on this. I think the game does look very good. And to your point, I had watched the gameplay, but hadn't quite realized. But you're right that the free flowing nature of the combat will probably make it feel a little more natural. And sometimes grid based stuff, even with Fire Emblem, can be a little bit restrictive. So I'm interested to see how that plays into the level design, especially if things don't need to necessarily be specific blocks and things. But the one thing that I'm latched onto most for this whole reveal is the fact that this game is coming out in 2022,
Yeah,
a year that is already looking to be pretty stacked with releases. And the first game released 4 months after it was announced, and I'm not sure
sure.
exactly what they're planning on this one being with such an extended lead up for the launch cycle.
I didn't read into it at all. Frankly, I think that there's probably convergence factors. I think that it's partially that they probably got delayed by COVID because keep in
Hmm.
mind they at least in the I don't know because you watched the gameplay broken out. They said pre-alpha gameplay,
Hmm.
um, in Ford. So they're clearly still they
Okay.
still have a lot of work to do. Maybe they
Well,
didn't.
if that's pre-alpha,
Yeah.
that's where I expect wireframes and stuff. That's pretty good looking.
So I'm imagining that maybe they probably didn't end Kingdom Battle and start Sparks of
Sure.
Hope.
Okay.
I imagine that COVID delayed them. Ubisoft has several major titles slated still for the year.
Yeah.
Nintendo obviously is going to have probably a pretty full lineup. I think that it was probably it's probably a practical and strategic decision to push it. I don't think that this is going to be the big hype builder. This isn't
Sure.
Breath of the Wild or Splatoon. I think this was just more a function of maybe this game is coming out pre E3 next year or like early
Sure. Yeah.
summer.
More than
So
likely, I would say.
yeah, so you take the opportunity at a completely boring Ubisoft forward to capture that moment
Sure. Good point.
and then release it. But
Yeah.
Tucker, the big question that people are talking about because the community has a one track mind right now is
Hmm.
that does this game look too good to be a Switch game? Was that running on Switch Pro hardware?
No, I mean
Yeah,
it's
no.
not running on a Nintendo Switch. It's running on their dev kit version with probably a
Right.
computer hardware running it at the best possible specs, so it looks good for a trailer. But I don't think it looks insane where it
Yeah.
would need to have the boost of power. But also, It's possible. The Switch Pro is going to be announced, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see another trailer of this game that does
Yeah.
have a focus on it being like, hey, this is the animation quality and the scope of the background and stuff are really taking advantage of that hardware if you play it on that system. But this trailer didn't scream to me, holy shit, I can't believe this is running on Nintendo Switch. So no, I don't
Yeah.
think this has anything to do with a Switch Pro.
No, I completely agree. I think that was. There's just been a lot of reaches recently as to what is teasing a Switch Pro because people want it so badly. The example that Colin Moriarty always uses, and that I will steal for the purposes of this discussion, is that if you look at the first Uncharted game and you look at The Last of Us, those came out on PS3 and they're
Yeah.
night and day different.
100%.
Developers become more familiar with the hardware the longer they work with it. Believe it or not. And so intrinsically, their games look better, they run better, they're better optimized, they've got higher fidelity because they know how to get more out of the hardware. And as I wrote in my CBR piece, I'm sure we're going to see the exact same fidelity boost from Breath of the Wild 1 to Breath of the Wild 2.
Sure.
And I'm sure people, again, are going to say, this is running on Switch Pro, when ultimately Aonuma is one of the most legendary and storied developers in the industry, and his team is obviously going to eke more power out of that hardware. So I think that's silly, but I think the game's just early. It's spec'd up on dev PC hardware.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
you're totally right. People are freaking out. You got to calm down. We got a new Mario Rabbids game. Calm down. We're all good. You know. Do you have anything else?
The last thing I want to say is that I'm very glad that this happened at this Ubisoft Forward because, like you said, and I think most of the industry has come around and realized that Ubisoft didn't really bring the biggest guns this year. It wasn't really anything super surprising. And unfortunately, this got leaked by some dumb fuck Nintendo intern because this genuinely would have been a surprise. It would have been something to really capitalize on the end. And you imagine Ubisoft is sitting there chewing on their shoes like, damn it, I can't believe that it leaked because out on a conference that it seems like, honestly, I didn't watch it, but looking from the outside, people were not happy with this. This was the one thing that was new, fresh, exciting, and it was leaked, but it wasn't necessarily expected.
Yeah. I just generally don't think that a lot of these publishers need to hold press conferences every year. And Ubisoft is a great example of that. This was a great moment. I think that honestly, that Avatar trailer from Ubisoft Massive was pretty good too.
Sure.
But again, that game, we already knew that game was coming, and that was disappointing for me because if Massive's Avatar game isn't launching until next year, when the fuck is their Star Wars game coming out? That's going to be several years away. But that's a complete tangent. You're completely right. Ubisoft Forward was completely boring, and this would have been the one huge moment, but it got fucked up. So.
And I think it's hilarious. We're not going to have really an opportunity to talk about the fact that this game leaked ever again because we're just going to forget about it. Yeah. But I think it's funny that it was official Nintendo thing, like the straight up actual game page. And it was up for hours. Like I woke up a couple hours after it came out and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Let me click on this. Oh, the page is there. This is still up. And it got taken down after a few hours. But we're used to seeing Ubisoft fucking Panama release a thing or Walmart Zimbabwe drop their page, but this was actual Nintendo, and I think that's kind of fucked up. But also I think that it does mean that they're going to be real cracked down because we haven't had any confirmed E3 leaks for Nintendo yet.
No, we haven't.
Cross my fingers. Let's hope nothing happens. But I think this will mean they're going to just really lock things down and kick out all the new recruits to be like, don't fuck this up, please.
I'm sure Doug Bowser rounded up the entire staff and took this one intern out to the fucking courtyard and beat him senseless in front of the other people and said, look at what happens. This is what happens. You have to make it 48 hours. You don't want to be next, because Nintendo has leaked nothing for one time, Tucker.
Yeah.
For one time.
For the first time in a while, I would say.
Nothing has leaked. It's ridiculous. But I think we're done. Don't show this again on Tuesday, Nintendo.
It will be there. It 100% will be there. Skyrim with the Zelda stuff was there. Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle was there 2017. They do show these games multiple times. I think both those things, it'll be a 20 to 30-second deal. It's not going to be a full new trailer. I'd like to see more gameplay, I think, at some point soon, because it was a pretty condensed amount of gameplay, but we're going to see it on Tuesday, so don't get your fucking panties in a twist.
I think save it for September. Save it for a September direct when they've got an
Sure.
actual gameplay trailer. When they cut up a gameplay trailer, a little more work, but we'll see. But everyone, thank you for joining us as we talk about Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. I think it's just be Spark of Hope. The S is a little bit. There's also no colon between Mario and Rabbids and Sparks of Hope. This is a Kirby Air Ride situation where I would have punctuated the title differently. But we're done. Like the video, subscribe. I told you to do that already. If you didn't, you're already late. So don't make me mad if I've even late. Goodbye.